Alava Avenue is well represented. What's your view of Toledo? Toledo and who? Toledo and Alava. Here we are. This is a terrible difference.
All these people. More, but.
Get down here.
But actually, the ones we have gone through are usually pretty small.
I think a little bit more in the past, no? No?
Maybe a little bit, maybe.
All right, I guess I'll be doing this again.
No.
Yeah, starting recording?
How many do you have joined virtually?
A lot, that it was being put up for sale, and that's been a number of years.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome, everyone. We're going to get started. Thank you for coming in. I am going to be walking around a little bit, so, you know, instead of standing behind that microphone, we'll have the slideshow presentation. My name is Fred Cusero. I'm the Community Recreation Director for the city. Behind me is Carolina Vesser. She's the Assistant Director for Community Recreation. And Sarah, who is running the Zoom, is the Administrative Assistant to the department. So, and she's also famous because she's up there.
Oh.
Yeah.
I put the things on your door.
Yeah. So what we're here today to discuss is the open space that we purchased at Toledo and Alava. What we had to do, we had to do kind of a quick neighborhood meeting because what we wanted to try to do is get some additional funding for this project through the state government, and I'll go into what the grant is that we're looking for. And one of the requirements of the government, the grant is to have a neighborhood meeting with the specific intention of saying, we're letting you know that we're going for a grant. So the neighborhood is aware of it and it's okay with it. So if we can go to the first slide, just to go over the project a little bit. Difficult. So, and right as we're waiting for that, Toledo and Alava is a placeholder name. We'll come up with a name as we get closer to a project, and we'll see. There is a naming policy process to name parks, but the first name is usually geographic, so I won't call it Toledo and Alava. We'll probably call it Toledo Park or Alava Park, one of the two. And if there ever is a request or a petition or you know, a commission item to name it, then we'll name it that way. It's similar to we've done a lot of neighborhood parks in the last few years, and the majority of them are named after locations, whether it's Nisha Park, Catalonia Park, Lisbon Park, so it's all been based on the streets that they're at. Sardo. So, quick housekeeping. This is an in-person meeting, but it's also a hybrid. It's on Zoom. So, those of you that are on Zoom, I got to project to the speaker. You'll have the ability to ask questions through the chat function on the Zoom, and anything that we leave out or that you need information on, if you don't do it through the Zoom, and this goes for everyone, we do have the ability to get comment on our website under Park Projects, and we'll have the email address at the end of the presentation. So, when I talked about FRDAP grant, that's what this is. It's a Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program, and it's a competitive reimbursement type of grant. We have done this in the past. Salvador Park, we just built an ADA inclusive playground that has a big track and everything. That was done with partial FRDAP funds. We received $175,000 for that. Just a small amount because the whole project was close to $800,000. So we were able to get some money, and we've gotten grants over the years for a lot of other different parks through FRDAP. It's a state grant system, and what it does is it's competitive. It's based on point system. You get slotted, and then whatever amount of funds the state decides to fund, then they go down the list, and you go down the list of points, and when you hit the full button on funding, those are the projects to get. So we try to have different projects that meet a lot of the criteria to get high scores. So as you can tell through the slide, the eligible participants are all the governments, and it's for outdoor recreational sites. There's points that are given for different types of, amenities that you have, and we'll go into that in the next slide. Maximum grant that you can get is $200,000, it has to be matching. Whatever you get from FRDAP, you need to have put in like. So if we're going for a $200,000 grant, there has to be at least $200,000 matching. And as you'll see later on the slide, we do have that for this project. So these are the priority areas that they look at for our section of the state and our population level. So it's health and well-being, public access, accessibility, connectivity, economic opportunities, ecotourism, resource management, and stewardship. So those are the priorities. The first two are really the two that we look at, and you'll look at with this park, because you're gonna have walkways, you're gonna have exercise, kid equipment for children to work on, and this is all conceptual. There's all kinds of different things that we'll move in as we go forward, but those are the kind of things that we're looking at in terms of meeting the priority areas for the grant. One thing that's important to note is there might be a misconception that an entire open area that's on Toledo and Alava is the entire park. And it's only 3 of the 6 lots. They only sold us a certain amount. It's a 15,000 square foot lot that we have. That's the 3 lots that are on the south side of that open area. The reason why we purchased it is our strategic plan for parks is we want to have a park within a half-mile walk of all residents. But on top of that, we want an accessible walk. So one of the things that came through our strategic plan a few years ago is we didn't want homeowners to have to cross a major roadway. So this property, so when you look at it, there is a park that's across the street, across Granada and across Bird, which is Ruth Bryan Waterway Owen, but that's 2 busy streets to cross. So this park property kind of met the need for that whole area, which is to the west to the east of Granada and south of Bird in that half-mile radius. So it fills up quite a bit of that open space that we have. As you can see, we still have some open spaces, but that one fills a nice spot. Ironically, at one point we bought 5 pieces of land. If you go back to that slide, we bought 5 pieces of land at one point for the neighborhood parks. We were trying to buy 6. And the 6th one was a little bit further to the west, was right around on San Antonio, more near the high school, and we just did not have support from the residents to buy it. They thought that a park so close to the school would be a detriment to the neighborhood, so we didn't get consensus on that. We scrapped it, and we had to wait a few years to find another piece of land in that property that would still hit a lot of that area. So we were able to find this one. It came suddenly where the church allowed us to look at purchasing part of it. So, we were able to purchase it, and then comes the next step. What do we do with it? And we have to get in line for the development of all the parks that we have. So you can tell the little yellow spot tells you how we serve it. There's the plat map and the aerial view. It's 3 lots. Not exactly, it looks like it's right on top of a house, but it's not.
That would be my house.
Yeah. We're gonna,
You can blame the property appraiser for that.
I'm wondering what they're gonna plant on top of my roof.
Yeah, part of our park project, we're just gonna put a wall right in between your house.
Yes, that is.
You see, this is a little bit better.
Yes, that one is a better illustration of what we're looking to do there. That's the area that we'll be working. This is just the north view and the south view. As you can see, we have the sign up. We are doing, the little pollinator butterfly site there as just a pilot project. Those are the east and west views as well. So this is a concept that is based on similar designs that we've done in neighborhood parks of similar sizes. This isn't exactly what's going in there because this is a concept that we have to show for the grant. As we move forward down the process, we will come back to the community with once we select a designer and design, and look at actual different amenities that you want in it. Now, we've run the gamut when we've done parks like this, where we've run the gamut where We've had, like Betsy Adams Park has playground equipment. Mallorca Park has playground equipment. Sardo does not have playground equipment. Lisbon does not have playground equipment. Catalonia just has those 3 little turtles there, and none of that other stuff there. So this is just a microcosm of what can be in there. This is not what we have planned for it. This is just an illustration to show you what is possible. What we try to do with bigger neighborhood parks, depending on what the neighborhood wants, is have an open area of grass. This one doesn't show that. You have it a little bit over to the north, but you have an open area of grass, a play area, and a lot of walking, seating, and natural elements. If a play area is desired by the neighborhood, we don't push it on to the neighborhood. We'll show you pictures. There's one park, Venetia Park, which has a kids play area, but it's very small and really more for really small little children, and that's what they wanted. So we pride ourselves on having listened to the neighborhoods on all these different parks that we've done. And if you want to look at them, they're Lisbon, Catalonia, Venetia, Sardo, and Mallorca, and Marlin. But Marlin's really far south in Kings Bay. So those are the ones that we just recently finished, and they're this type of park. And there's also Betsy Adams, and we're actually working on one right now that we're starting construction on Maggiore. So as you can see, we're doing project after project. We're trying to line them all up. This is just a concept. These are some of the features that we have in our parks that are kind of our standards. That's our right now, our bench and our picnic table standard. That's our dogway station standard. These are the different bike rack standards that we have. This is, a typical playground. We'll show you the ones that we use are a little nicer than that.
More for the mister.
Oh, that's a mister, correct. Yeah, the playground in the background, disregard, because the ones that we put in are a little nicer. The water fountain that has the 3 levels and the bottle filler, and that's our standard trash receptacle right now. And the signage, if we use it through our bronze placking, that's the color, and that's kind of the look that we have there. Some of the more natural elements that we have, and these are a lot of our parks, and these are different things that are possible. This isn't to say that we're putting any of these in your park, but these are the different possibilities that we'll show and we'll try to get. So this one here in the corner, this is Lisbon Park, and Lisbon Park happens to be, I think, the only one that has blue benches. That was just
The community wanted
the community wanted a splash of color, so we gave them a splash of color. A lot of our parks, even our smaller passive parks, have a lot of these rock benches. They're made out of limestone, and they're for sitting for a few minutes. You're not going to be able to sit there and read a book because it's not that comfortable, but that's what that neighborhood wanted. It's just a respite, not to be able to lie down there and sleep there. Over in the middle here, these are some cap rocks that some of the neighborhoods like them because they provided almost like a natural playground element or a natural play element for kids to jump and run. Some neighborhoods didn't want them. They thought we don't want our kids falling on rocks, so it all depends on what we're looking at. Now, over here on this corner, this was just an example to show you what the bollards are. We don't necessarily look at lighting for smaller parks like that in neighborhood residential areas, unless a residential area wants that. Usually if there's lighting, maybe it's look at more landscape up lighting, not bollard lighting, but it's just an example. And that is actually our Salvador zip line that we just finished. That's the one that I talked about that we got the big grant for. Up top is kind of our gate standard. When we put a gate around a park, it's the aluminum picket, and it has the dividers of that same limestone. That if you look at Betsy Adams is one that we recently finished. Actually, any of those neighborhood parks, they all have the same type of standard, which is the pickets. The pickets are small. They're usually 3.5 inches because they have to be safe for children that can't get through, can't get stuck. And it's that core rock that adds, instead of just having a metal, fortress, you get the natural element that breaks up in between, which is nice. And also is in character with Coral Gables. And up top, I think that's Ingram Park. That's Ingram Park. And that shows you that bench, but also how If you want ground cover and landscaping, it can be done that way. And there's a couple more examples.
Yes, this is the Flexi Paved Walkway.
Yes. So in some areas, we have asphalt walkways in some parks. In some, we have this Flexi Paved, which is a softer, easier on the knees type material. So a lot of these are dependent on what the neighborhood wants, but also on the available funding. So in terms of play areas, if you wanted to do play areas, there's all different types. But what we like to do with our playgrounds right now is we like to have them, it's what we call nature-inspired play. So a lot of it goes away from a lot of the metal bars and plastic, colors with the domes. We try to have it masked, it looks like a tree house, the steps are tree trunks, and we have some of these in our parks. Sometimes the slide is a log that looks like it's been hollowed out. So this is a 2 to 5, which is small. It's not very high. It's for smaller children. There's, depending on the amount of space that we use, you can factor in things like swings, or it's just the structure. In a lot of places, we don't have enough room. We just put the structure. So once again, it all depends on what the neighborhood is. But this is an option. And this is another option if you wanted something that's a little more adventurous and for a little bit of an older child group, which is 5 to 12. And the difference is, you have the height, you have a little bit more climbing, you have the slide, which is a little bit more appropriate for the ages 5 to 12. So these are some of the different things that we have. The one in the middle with the little log and the 3 logs on either side, that is actually at Venetia. So that's what I meant, like that's the entire playground at Venetia. That's what they wanted, that's what we gave them. We have bigger ones, like this one in this back corner. This is Betsy Adams with the rocks. And up top, one more, over to the middle, that majestic log, that's one of it's called the Tree of Life.
Home tree.
Home? I thought it was a Tree of Life.
We can call it.
Well, I like to call it the Tree of Life. It's at Mallorca Park, and it's fun. It's a little bigger, so it all depends on what scale of the neighborhood. And then you can always do mounds. We have a couple of mounds at Salvador with a little tunnel over on the right. You can do that as well. That's usually done with artificial turf. With grass, it's hard to keep the grass growing. But there's low level, non-obtrusive things like the Y logs, the balance beams. There's all kinds of different things you can do depending on the scale of what the neighborhood wants. It could be grand, it could be small. We don't really force anything on the community. We show the options and the menus, and then we try to come to a consensus. These are, in a nutshell, what we propose to have features, and this is what we're telling the state that is possible for this type of property. And that's perhaps the Flexi Paved Walkway Trail, the picnic tables, the receptacles, the fountain, a mister, play components, and the fencing. And there will be landscaping, and depending on what type of lighting, it could be up lighting, it could be base lighting, it could be higher lighting, depending on the neighborhood and what they want. So this is what I'm sure everybody wants to know. So we one of the things that, and we talked about this before the meeting, one of the things that's always the reality is all these projects take time. We haven't started here. We purchased it. We have something called a matrix within the city that has all the projects that in my department we need to do. And then they get slotted within a 5-year funding plan. I think the project list right now is about 35 or 40 different projects. And we're working on a few, we're completing some. This one got slotted in, so we're looking at getting funding. Is it?
This one's for
October, well, it's funded October 2022. Yeah, because it's not this fiscal year, it's next fiscal year. So that's when we'll start receiving the funding from the city, and that'll allow us to start with the designer and everything else. Now, our estimate on the project, if we get all those things, is $650. We are looking at getting funding from the city at $450 and hopefully getting the grant of 200. If we don't get that 200, obviously our scope for the project goes back down to 450 unless we're able to move money around. We've done that in the past where there's a project that has money slated for it and the project for whatever reason can't start yet. There's problems with the site, there's problems with the neighborhood, they don't want to start, and we can always push that back, and maybe, we've done that in the past, but sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, so I can't guarantee that. We're gonna put this park funding request in for an application, and then they'll award the grant funding, and then we'll go through, as we go through, we get the funding for the design, we start the design, then there's procurement and permitting. Oh, there it is. I was wondering where that slide was. So we have to meet, we're meeting right now to talk about the grant funding. We're also meeting with our advisory boards on Thursday because the grant is due on Friday. So once we turn that in, our next step is we get the architect, we get an architect that's going to give us a real schematic design. And then once we get that design, coming in, we'll come back to the neighborhood in the first half of 2022. Once we get the design and they get a real, design that has a bunch of different alternate elements that you can plug and play, put in and put out. And we'll bring that back to the community and we'll get the input. If we need to do a second meeting because the input is requesting a lot of changes, then we'll do that as well. We've done that. We've had properties where we show a design and the neighborhood loves it and we're done. And we've had properties where we've had to come back through 2, 3, or we came back 4 times. So, sometimes you got to come back a few times to get it done. And then after the follow-up community meetings, there's the permit and procurement for construction, and then the estimated construction timeline is 9 to 12 months. So it's kind of in line with all of our projects. It takes multiple years. And that is hopefully, as when we go through and the architect goes through, there's no mitigation issues like drainage or things like that might end up, adding to the scope of the project. It happened in Salvador. We needed to do drainage on the second half, and it added to the scope and it added to the timeline. But hopefully we don't have that here. We don't think so. We haven't seen anything that would send it to that level.
The only thing that's affecting now, which affects everybody, is the delay in materials. We're having a very
That
hard
is
time
true.
sourcing
Well,
materials.
we just, because we just broke ground on Maggiore Park, and we just heard word from the playground manufacturers that there's a 6-month lead time. So that's gonna push back the construction. Apparently, there's some strikes in California with all the shipping, and I don't know how that affects, but apparently that affects playgrounds. So we're running into a lot of this delay stuff that we weren't anticipating. So this is the email that we talked about. If there's any comment after this meeting, or your neighbors weren't able to come and they want, no problem, make sure that you have them, parksproject@coralgables.com. We'll have up this presentation and they'll be able to opine on it as we go. This really is for us to get the ball rolling and start at least looking at getting additional funding. And we will come back to you with a much more polished design.
Peter, just a quick question.
Yeah.
If you don't get the 200,000, does the project go forward anyway?
Yes.
Or is that a prerequisite? That goes forward anyway?
It goes forward anyway, it's just the scope changes. Now, because we go from having a possible 650 to having 450. So then the scope changes a little bit. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean, like I said, I might be able to find money down the line with other projects that are delayed, and there could be funding that we can delay one project and take that money for now and fund it in outgoing years. We've done that in the past. So, my hope.
You would just decide, given the less funding,
Right.
just whatever is ultimately decided as far as design,
Right.
that would just be scaled down.
It would be scaled down, and what we do with the designer, we have a cost estimate. That'll tell you what everything's gonna cost as we go. We're looking at, so far, parks of that size have ranged anywhere, depending on what the amenities are in there, anywhere from 300 to 600. That's kind of been the going rate, and, if you don't have a lot in there, there's a playground, if it's just walkways and benches, then yeah, it's gonna be 300.
Couple of questions.
Sure.
One, you did mention on parks that the community has input, the community decides, this is what the community says, this is what. One, how do you define who is community? And two.
You as a group.
Yeah, but when I say who decides, I mean, 10 people and that's it. So
Well-
is it us making
There's
the?
also individuals that are attending via Zoom.
I'm sorry, okay.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
No, so what,
appeal?
Right
Right,
now,
so-
we had two and they stepped up, so.
okay, so what we do is, and I'm sure all of you received it, is we canvass the area with door hangers. So, you know, we let everybody know. We have.
What area? Then the follow-up question is, you canvass the area, what area specifically? Because again, my concern is, we're only 10.
No, it's what, well, I wish I could show you the map.
I think we did close to
1,500 feet from the property.
50 houses.
15
Okay.
houses, but it's
1,500
15.
Yeah, 1,500 feet is what we
Okay.
go from the
Yeah.
property traditionally,
Okay.
and that's with door hangers. So
I-
there's other that's just the physical notices. We do social media notices, we do e-news notices, we have a monthly rec newsletter that goes out to 8,000,
But
participants.
then-
Several blocks that he goes with the door hanger above that 1,500.
But
It's not only
my
1,500,
follow-up
we go
question would be, the community decides, who decides who is the community? 1,500 feet away
1,500
from it,
feet.
and that's
Yeah.
it.
It's
If
the
you're
neighborhood resident.
1,700, you're not,
No.
1,500 in, you're in?
1,500 is the is what we have to inform. We go beyond that, actually. 1,500 is our scale,
Okay.
but we go beyond that, and it doesn't matter to us if it's 1,700, 1,750. What we're concerned about is the people that are going to be using that space.
Okay.
And not using that space because they're driving over. It's the people who are living and invested in that space, and whatever goes on, and whether you use it or not, if you live near it, you're gonna be affected by it. So that's who we try to pay attention to. And because what we wanna do is we wanna make sure that specifically, especially someone that lives next door, you know, those are the people that you know, we pay attention to. And because they're the ones that have to live with the activity there, so we wanna make sure that they're okay with what's going on in there. And, you know,
But mechanically, let's say if we get down to the design,
yeah,
say, I like design A, you don't like design B. As an example.
Yeah.
And
And it happens.
how mechanically do you get down to a number of votes?
Sometimes we try to find a consensus, so somebody
Oh.
wants a playground and somebody wants an open space, and, Director Becerra mentioned a good example of that is, Mallorca Park, where we had a divided neighborhood that they, you know, part of that group wanted something for play. It got a little bit smaller for play to still allow for open space area. And that's really a prime example of a community coming together that was very divided. And, you know, we invite you guys maybe to explore that park space, because it's really nice, and the community, even after it's been built, has been nothing but complimentary of the space, even the direct neighbors.
and we have had different, ways, depending on what the opposition was in between, and what the views were in each. We've had times where we had to go to vote, and I will tell you, the times that we've gone to vote, you know, the people whose property abuts the park or the adjacent park, we would give them a double vote. Because we thought it was fair. But we have had some fights. I've had to break up a couple. You know, luckily I'm a big guy, that's all right. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure whether any of the parts you showed would be representative of what you're looking for, maybe too theoretical. But here's my question. Do you measure the use of the parks?
When you say measure the use, how?
People
use.
build a playground and no one comes.
Yeah, that's very unlikely. I mean,
Well,
I don't
no,
that's not what I'm
no.
asking. Do you measure it or not? Do you measure the use of Lisbon Park? I know it's not a playground.
No,
Do you measure it?
in terms of,
There's a rating scale we use, and it's just, I was sharing with the two ladies that first came in, is we just completed our master plan process. So the master plan process is an inventory of all our 62 locations. So we have a combination of open spaces, which is more Lisbon. We have hardscape elements in that, but no playgrounds. Then we have playgrounds and we have facilities. They get inventory, and then there's a scale, a rating scale that gets measured of, you know, the aesthetics of it, the usage of it. So that's in our master plan if you want to look at it. Now, do we go and measure it on a daily basis? No.
I didn't say daily. Is there any metric
Yes.
where you're getting data that says, if you build it, they come?
we have.
If you're gonna spend $500 million,
Or-
that's what I'm saying,
or-
if you have a comparable park that can say, look, and I realize each location is different,
Right.
but
Yep.
is there, the visuals that I saw, is there a park like that?
Yep.
First of all, the answer may be no, or we
No,
don't know.
no, actually,
But
the
if the answer
example-
is, okay, then my next question is, who uses it?
And
And do you measure it? I mean, I hear, yeah, the neighbors and all that, I get it, and if it's just a neighborhood thing,
we
that's
measured
okay.
it, we measured it through our master plan assessment, but we cannot, I don't have a data marking it
Well,
down,
before you
but I do
spend-
have anecdotes on,
You know, that anecdotes don't do me any good.
okay, well,
I think another approach, have you
I will-
considered that, you mentioned the 1,500 feet. Have you done, basically gone house to house and say, well, will you use a park if we put it?
No, what we did is, as part of
Like a
master
survey.
plan, we did
Yeah,
a
right,
survey,
yeah.
they measured the north, central, and south.
Okay.
We did it different ways. We did community input meetings, we did focus groups, and then we did the survey process. So the survey was, there was a way to sign up for the survey, which was not stratified in any way, and then there was the other part of the survey, which was basically kind of like a pool that was selected, not through us, it was an outside consultant, those retained, so there's no bias or anything, of individuals that were mailed the survey or phone called the survey. This was in 2019, so it's a little bit older now, but that's where the process starts, and we try to revisit that every 5 years. So every 5 years, we go back out, we do an assessment of all our inventory, of what the needs are for the community, and what any deficiencies are. We had a conversation about dog parks, so that's a deficiency right now, the two ladies right here. So that's something that's measured in that survey, and that gives us guidelines of what is it the community is looking for, what is it that they currently don't have, and what is it they're willing to invest in. So that gives us an idea.
and we also had a community meeting, I don't know if any of you attended, before we bought the piece of land. When we went to purchase it, to say, should we buy the land to
When
use it
was
as a
it?
park?
2019.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
That's 2019.
And we did that too, before we bought it, to make sure that, yeah, the neighborhood was okay with us purchasing it as a park. I will say, I don't have hard data where I sit there and I check it.
Well,
But I can tell you,
but
it's-
wouldn't it make sense?
I haven't seen a park that isn't used heavily in these neighborhoods. All the 5 that we built, they're very heavily used.
But I would take you to one that isn't.
Which one?
Lisbon Park.
Yeah, because it doesn't have play on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful, it's
It
beautiful.
might behoove you, just
Yeah.
from a practical standpoint, say the 1,500 feet, 1,700 feet, to do a poll, say, would you use the park if we're there? That's all.
And the
Because
second-
I've lived there, we've lived, well, 16 years now. It's been an open field.
Right.
Which, I mean, on its own can attract, people all over, even though it's private property.
Right.
But I haven't seen a lot of activity there, which is private, as an empty field.
Right.
And I just see it as.
One big factor
I
that
know
always
that.
comes back to us is when we look at building something, the community says, it needs to be accessible. Are you gonna put a sidewalk in? Are you gonna mitigate traffic? Are you gonna measure traffic? How are kids gonna get there? Because these parks, this one specifically, is not designed for people to drive to and park to. This will not have parking. There's no space for parking. So you're gonna have to look at, it's
Oh,
gonna
we're
serve
gonna
the
talk
community.
about traffic at this meeting?
No.
I do want to bring it up.
Why'd you bring that up?
That was my follow-up question. My follow-up question, I live in Alava, it's a few here that live in Alava. So when people are coming north on Granda, they see the rate, they see the light rate,
And everybody.
Alava is the last
I've
case.
done it myself.
So you know what? Make a right. And my driveway goes out of Alava, and I purposely, a few times, walk into not walk with the car, just drive into the road, because there's some car just speeding by.
Yeah.
And I take my time, because this is a neighborhood street.
I just have to second. It is very dangerous there in the morning especially. You get in the afternoon too, people cutting, and they just boom.
And I take my time, and I see the person like,
Well, I will tell
I say,
you,
you know
what
what?
we've seen is, not before things are built, but once you build something that has children, suddenly the priority changes to mitigate traffic. And we've seen that at Betsy Adams, because there was a huge issue there.
then my follow-up question is, considering the traffic calling in, we have a park, there is no parking spaces, so where are people?
Walkable, right? That's the idea, that you have to have sidewalks to make it
Yeah.
safe,
Is
Yeah.
that part of the strategic plan,
Mhm.
sidewalk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to make, at least what we're focused on is our park spaces, so
Right.
connectivity and access to parks. Not trying to put sidewalks everywhere in the city, but
Right,
if we
but-
have a park, you need to be able to access it.
And I didn't recall seeing that on any of the slides, but,
If you look
what
at the
is the
schematic.
sidewalk plan?
Yeah, hold on, I'll go back to the
Yeah,
schematic.
let's take a better look at that.
So basically, and this is kind of the idea of a sidewalk, traditionally, of what we do. We've done a couple of corner lots like this, I
Yeah,
know
but
the one
there's
is
no,
an example,
there's no sidewalk on Alava, so that sidewalk ends there.
right now, yeah.
And that makes no sense. I mean, because the neighborhood has a lot of little
Right.
piece of a sidewalk where it's in front of two houses and then it ends.
Yeah, so I think the
My main
sidewalk,
concern is just be on safety, mainly on the Alava side. You would have kids there, kids are gonna chase balls out into the street, and
There will
traffic
definitely be
can
fencing,
be,
it's
yeah,
just,
very
so-
No, you're skipping,
We were
my
fenced. We were
Alava
fenced.
is, according,
Yeah.
We have a raised hand, so we're
And a
gonna.
raised hand. Okay, thank you. I wanted to put out a new concept, a different concept,
Mhm.
to do something unique, to do something that's different, that has not been done. We've seen pictures of all these parks, and they all kind of look the same. They all have little kid stuff, and they all look the same. I want to propose that when we go home, to Google Libris Gardens, and they, Libris, I don't know how to say it. I have it written down, I always forget. Okay, it's 4,000 years old, the concept, but they're getting to be very popular. And, the spelling would be Labyrynth, Garden.
Labyrinth.
Labyrinth, I can never say that, labyrinth.
Oh, it's
And,
labyrinth.
And then it says, ideas, so a garden ideas, and you'll see, they'll show you pictures of all the different ideas with this type of, garden. And, like I said, they're started 4,000 years ago. Coral Gables prides itself on historic preservation and history, so it aligns with the character of the city. Also, what it does, it helps to reduce stress. It's kind of something that brings people down. And the mental health of the people in general in big cities is pretty high. The children are stressed, the teachers are stressed, the parents are stressed, everybody's stressed. So these children all go to school and they have playground equipment there. The Salvador Park is awesome. We've got all these other parks for children all over, but there isn't any one quiet place.
There's actually, now that you mention it, there's one at Vizcaya.
Well,
They have
and you know what, there's another one, I was told at church the other day, there's one at the University of Miami,
Okay.
because I haven't seen it.
Me neither.
But the University of Miami has a course, I mean, they have a whole thing, because, neurologists have found that, mindfulness helps to reduce stress, and then it improves your overall well-being, your body is better, and you're just a happier person, you're a better citizen, and so on and so forth. And so they do have one there. So I propose you all to look it up and see what you find, and see if we could have something creative like that, and something
you
different.
definitely can.
And the good news
No problem.
that you'll like, they are much less expensive to
Of course they
create.
are, of course they are.
Much
More
less
expensive to maintain though.
No,
No, they're not.
Absolutely
The
not.
labyrinth was your,
Well, they're all different things.
Depends on what you do.
Well,
Yeah.
look at, because
Yeah, I've seen the pictures.
it's
It all
all
depends.
different pictures, and you can, some of them are really elaborate, some are more simple, some are done with stone, some are done with wood cuts, and, I mean, I just read about it, and said that they're less expensive to create than a lot of other
They
things.
definitely are, just
You
based
know,
on looking at them, it looks like they
And
would be.
then you could have your benches and stuff, but it would be different, it would be,
I'm all for different, we could
Something,
definitely look at it, like I said, I'm not tied to anything, we have found, that most of the time, we go to the neighborhood, play equipment seems to be the big thing. If this neighborhood doesn't want it, Sardo didn't want it, it's not a problem. Doesn't really matter to us, to be honest with you. What it matters to us is that the community gets what they want. And we're not tied in, I I don't get any special awards if I put in
No, I
X amount of
understand.
playgrounds, so it doesn't matter to us.
Yeah, I just.
It doesn't matter with the grant, right? Like, the grant wouldn't, if you propose, you fill out your grant by Friday and say that there will be play equipment, and then later.
That's just a point system, so they give you a higher priority. When it comes to the reimbursable part, it might not be 200,000, maybe it's just 100,000 of it, depending on what you put in.
And we have, like, we just did it with a couple projects, and we've had to, at the end, you just do amendments to it and the funding and everything else, so. And there isn't to say that a labyrinth, depending on, some of the pictures I saw, you could interpret it as a play area. If it's, you got that maze quality, it doesn't have to be a brick and mortar playground, it just has to be a playground.
It's a circular, usually it's a circular, and
Yeah.
you know what's really funny, I was getting dressed, and this little thing looks like one. It's circular, and it's got, you know, the lines, and I thought, isn't that interesting? But, so, yes, you can make them, usually, it's not a walkway that's really wide.
Right.
They're narrower, and then there's stones or they're wood or whatever.
Right.
And, so you looked at them.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
I looked at them while you were talking about them, actually.
Oh, my God.
It's a wonder of technology.
I mean,
Yes, sir.
now that's a really.
I'd like to sort of second and amend this. I'm very much in favor of passive parks.
Wonderful.
The playground stuff, I hate to, but it's nonsense. Everyone's got it, there's nothing
They even
unique
have it in their
about it.
backyard.
There's
Kids have
nothing
their
unique
playground.
about it. Here's an opportunity to make, you can win an award, okay? By having something that's unique. And so I'm the culprit who got the pollinator site.
That's great.
I saw a butterfly when I went out there.
And you're not gonna see, you're not gonna see me if you build that.
Are you Dennis?
Yes.
Oh, hey, Dennis, I'm Fred, we've been emailing.
A pollinator site that can be interpreted for children, that's passive, is so much more advantageous mentally and physically to them than falling and the liability created by crashing your head on one of
Yeah.
those things.
Well,
Right.
I mean,
And I want to know,
there,
I love children.
there is counterpoint to that, and, but, like I said, for us, you know, there's communities that say, I mean, we had a few that were like insistent, child equipment, play equipment. If they don't,
That's why I asked,
are they
are they using it? If
Well,
you're not going back
well,
and surveying,
well,
then.
your example was Lisbon doesn't have play equipment. So,
I know, but
Mallorca has play equipment,
But
we have children,
but you're not surveying.
Well, I would jump in there also, and I would say, given the money, we're gonna put in here, a lot of money, it would behoove you to go around, so you wanna use 1,800 foot or 1,700 foot, go door to door and say, ask them, will you put a park here, or are you gonna use it?
Do you have children
Or do you have children?
that are under the age
Well,
of X
whether
or
children
Y?
or not, I mean, but
Oh, yeah.
there has to be some
children,
demand.
grandchildren, I mean,
What
so
about
this.
dogs?
Yeah,
Or
dogs,
dogs,
yeah,
yeah.
dog park,
But
there's
to do-
all kinds of
But make
possibilities.
sure you don't wanna build something and then it's just gonna sit there
Oh,
and maybe a few people use it.
Look, you know, we haven't gone out, and we haven't sat there and marked it. All I can tell you is based on, you know, especially the ones with play equipment, of course, we, you know, just based on our eyes and based on our staff that takes their kids out there and sees it. So they're used, but we, you know, and then there's passive parks that aren't used. You know, Sardo is a little empty, but not every park has to have 40 or 50 people in it. I mean, some parks are made for, you know, to be environmentally friendly, to be natural. It doesn't have to have 100 people in it. I think, you know, having a park in that lot, in my opinion, you know, beats having a building in that lot. So,
Maybe we backtrack, 'cause I think-
A handful of
Yeah, I would
adjacent
agree. I would
property
agree.
owners.
Right.
Those pocket parks are a waste of money.
When you asked for a measurement, I think you missed this because you walked in a little bit later, but when, Director Casero originally explained it, the way we measure and identify locations, we have what's called a level of service map. So basically, we look at walkability within neighborhoods. And so we have bubbled out here, you can see what's the half-mile radius, what's the quarter-mile radius, and this is the entire linear side of the city of Fort Gables. And when we did the zoom-in version here, of the north side and the south side, this actual part affects both. I can zoom.
and
So this is that spot right here. where this is who we would service based on that walkability.
And I will tell you,
identifying park.
that's kind of one of the kind of strategies that we've been given from a city's perspective, from the commission level, is, you know, I know our mayor is strongly in favor of acquiring park properties, those pocket parks, and having a half-mile radius for the neighborhoods to go. And sometimes, you know, they're just quiet, respite places. They're not, you know, like I said, we don't have, they're not all the same. They're all different. Even within, as we showed you, the play equipment is different in some don't have it. And so we look at what the neighborhood wants to provide, and we move forward with that. And if it's more of a Zen labyrinth garden and that kind of, yeah, we can do that. It's not anything for us. It's trying to make the community happy.
I know it's not the scope of the meeting, Peter, but honestly, safety standpoint, gotta do something about this. What you're gonna do, if more people go to the park,
Yes.
then you're running the risk that more people are gonna get hit.
You're absolutely right. And that's something, as we start going through projects, that's what we run into. And then we get involved, our traffic advisory board, and we get, you know, our public works department. Sometimes, I don't think that road is a problem, because it's not a county road. I think that's a city road. We'll have to make sure. If it's a city road, it's a lot easier for us to do things. If it's a county road, it becomes more difficult. And it's not a collector. Neither Toledo nor Alava seems like it's a collector. Granada, I think, is, so that would be a problem. But, so we will definitely, that's part of every park project that we're looking at.
Normally, once we put something in there, then we can request like a traffic study, and then they can make an assessment and recommendation. But if you don't have anything in there, then most of the time it gets unheard or unmet. We even for Venetian Pool, with the soda became really, really busy, and we had to request, and that was actually one we had to go through the county, and it took us almost 3 years just to get them to put a traffic study in there, and we had to justify it because of swim lessons and kids using it. They didn't care that, you know, 600 to 1,000 people visited, but when we said, hey, there's children who cross the street every day because they go to swim lessons, then it became an important priority on their radar, and they sent somebody out to do a traffic study.
By the way, this piece of advice on the lead times you were giving, given the current situation, my experience,
Yeah, and we're finding that now.
We hope that, you know, because this one won't start for a while. We're hoping that within the next year, the supply lines get back into shape and everything else. So, but if not, that's why we put those dates, and, you know, we're not under any, you know, delusion that it's gonna take a while.
Are you here for a Blue Road meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll get started promptly. We had 2 back-to-back meetings, but you can have a seat right here. We're wrapping up this.
I have a question. One thing I observed being in the neighborhood was, the school buses tend to come and park on that north side of that parcel along Toledo, and wait. So they wait to go to the high school, or they wait to go to somewhere.
Yeah.
And so they're sitting there idling with their diesel fumes. If you guys don't own that part of the property, would you be speaking to the church owners or to the school?
We'd have to identify which school, so if it's the Gables High School, we'll probably talk, they have a separate, division within the school board, which is just transportation, and they're sometimes a lot harder to deal with,
Well,
but
we can,
reach out.
I don't know which.
Sarah, if you can make a note, because we have the
School committee
the school resource officers are in my building, in my office, so I'll just let them know.
Maybe
So they can
pop
look at
over
it.
there and ask which school bus
Yeah,
is
no,
working right there.
we'll inform the officers of it. All right, do we have any other questions or comments? Well, I thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is just the
Thank you for
beginning, we'll be
holding it.
coming back, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more discussion and debate.
And the next meeting would be next year.
Yeah, it'll be, like April, May 22.
Okay.
This presentation, the recording of this presentation, as well as the PowerPoint, will go on our Parks
Thank you.
website, Parks
I'll be
Project,
back.
and we're actually gonna open it
Okay.
for commentaries for the next 30 days.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, yeah. My name's Fred. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm literally,
Right next to it.
absolutely,
Okay, so,
I mean,
we're gonna take special care of it.
I'm almost in the park.
No, I know, I see it.
I am part of the park.
Yes, you are. We will make sure that,
That I can sleep at night.
yes,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for coming in. Nice to have people come.
I like people that are interested. Debate is great.
So I'm gonna end this one, right, Sarah? There was nobody else on this?
I have someone that I'm talking to right now.
Okay, I see.
May I ask a question?
Gables.com/Parks Project.
No, Parks Project, I told you.
No, that's not, what's the website? It's, Gables, Gables Recreation / Parks Project.
Yeah, sidewalk also, one still.
Gables Recreation.
Sure, you're always looking over
You had it on the front.
shoulder.
No, that was, oh, you know, you're right.
We have a dachshund
Back here.
and,
No,
and
it's not. That's just, email.
part dachshund, part, Rottweiler, part Her name, yeah, see her around.
We have to go to the neighbor of the dog park there, or no?
No, the dog park will be fine, fine with me.
So it's CoralGables.com/Parks Project. That's where we have it.
CoralGables.com/.
/Parks Project.
Okay, I just sent it.
So I don't need to unmic them or anything?
Is that recording?
Thank you. I'm gonna end this one, right?
Yeah, you can end that one now.